Welcome, everyone. It's Mad, and today we're going to do something different, a new series where I take a look at each element in all the Dynamax. And today we're going to start with water. So, welcome to the Dynamax water analysis. And this is going to be April 2025, as we're going to review this every so often when required. So, let's go. First off, we're going to start off with Gigantamax Lapras, who is a ice and water type unit, and we've only got Gigantamax to take a look at. CPs 1435 through 1509, so 1509. Next time we get a Gmax Lapras, it's the target you're going to be shooting for. It is weak to electric, fighting, grass, and rock, so it's a different weakness than most of the others we're going to see. It's only strong to water, which it's still pretty strong to, and even stronger to ice. With that, its stats are pretty low for attack, even for water types. Its defense is mid, but its HP is one of the largest overall. For fast attacks, really, you're going to stick with Water Gun overall because it's 0.5 seconds, and partially why it's really part of the water family, anyways. And on top of it, because it's Gmax only, it's always going to attack with ice in its transformed form. So you do not need to have the ice version or worry about the element that you're using for the fast attack for, as it will always attack with ice as when it's transformed. The charge moves from a Dynamax standpoint don't really matter. You only really care about that when you're using it outside of Dynamax, which is what, I do now use for a lot of my units, as they tend to be my higher leveled ones overall. So you can use the charge moves that you prefer overall. Generally, the best one is the Ice Beam, which you won't be able to get until specific moves or if you use the Elite TM. But Blizzard is an acceptable use overall as well. All right, for the water form, as an attacker, it's pretty poor. It is the weakest of all attackers. It's still somewhat decent overall at a 3, but for the water, it is a weak attack. For a tank, it's actually pretty strong overall. The reason it loses 1 or 2 points because it doesn't have as wide of a range, but what it does absorb or does resist, it does very well. And it is pretty much by far the best healer for the water type overall. And as a healer in the overall category, it's still one of the better healers. It is now being outshined by Blissey, Chansey, and Gmax Snorlax, but overall, I still consider it one of the best healers, especially since it is a good tank, and you can tank and heal with Lapras as long as you're fighting something that attacks with water or ice. Next is Squirtle. Squirtle takes increased damage from electric and grass and is strong to fire, ice, steel, and water. We don't care about the stats because it does upgrade, but we're going to look at Squirtle because this is what you're generally going to be fighting, either for the Dynamax version, and obviously for Gmax, you're going to be fighting Blastoise. The IV here is 540 for a hundo, and you're looking at 497 for a floor. The Blastoise evolution is from Squirtle to War Turtle to Mega Blastoise. It does take 125 candy, which is fairly expensive. And kind of one of the biggest weaknesses overall is that a Dynamax Blastoise does take a lot of candy to upgrade. It has the same strengths and weaknesses. If you're fighting Gmax Blastoise, you're going to be looking for electric and grass units only. But all in all, you see with the 171 attack that it's not very strong in the attack either. Its defense is decent, 207, and its HP is a little bit lower than what we would like in a tank overall. Its fast attacks, if you are using a Dynamax, you need to be careful which fast attacks you're going to be using. If you want to be safe, you generally stick with Water Gun. Rollout is important though, because it is the only rock that we currently have. But for bite, it does also have a very fast attack for bite. So if you're using Gmax, and you're probably still going to want to stick with Water Gun. But if you're a Dynamax and you need a dark attacker as well, you can use a Dynamax Blastoise for bite. In general, I'm not a huge fan of the Dynamax Blastoise, but because it is so useful and can attack fairly well in Dark as well, and Dark is a little harder to get. I mean, obviously you could use Gengar as well, but depending on what you need to fight against, it is nice to use Bite. So with that, even though with its low attack, it still has an awful lot of uses. And with Rollout, that is currently still our only choice, but that means Blastoise really can only be used in the transformation phase, and a Dynamax Blastoise just isn't super strong. But we've had some double weak enemies, and with that, that really is still going to be more beneficial overall. So Dynamax Blastoises still have a lot of use. For the charge moves, Hydro Cannon is definitely the one. So the next time we get a community day or something with Hydro Cannon, that would be really nice, but that means you'd probably have to reinvest overall. For the Dynamax or Gmax in general, a lot of the charge moves aren't really all that necessary, unless if you plan on also using it for the regular content as well. For the attacker, a Dynamax is 2 in the water sense, and if you look at the slightly different color, that's how I'm going to do Gmax, so that you can look at both Dmax and Gmax on the same chart overall. For a Gmax, it does go up to around a 5. I do have 11 spots here, because we do go up to 11 for the best. That's definitely telling you it's the best in either the water or overall. But from an overall attacker standpoint, it only goes from 2 to 3, because it is pretty weak in general. Water has some very interesting dynamics here, where it has 1 or 2 really strong units, and the others are fairly weak. And so with that, I don't really want to make it like a whole bunch of 1s and 2s. So the scale is a little bit more of a bell curve here, for the water, but for everything, it's speaking fairly true in general. For a tank in water, Blastoise is the best tank overall for at least tankiness in the water category. And for the overall, I've rated a 9 out of 11, or 8.5 or so. In general, its biggest weakness is that it just doesn't have enough resistances to be super super useful, hence where it is. And from a healer standpoint, its HP is just not enough to really use as a healer. And for a tank, unless if you've got a lot of extra candy, and at that point, honestly, it's still better to just attack than to heal, as Blastoise can only really give you around 15 to 18 healing per, even if you get your max spirit up to level 3. It's just not worth the candy. And it's just better to attack than to try and heal. Next is Kubfu. And you're saying, but Kubfu is a fighting type. There's a very specific Kubfu, though, Rapid Strike, that does have water. So with that, let's go directly to Rapid Strike Urshifu. It's a very interesting unit, as Urshifu Rapid Strike has a lot of increased damage, but also a lot of resistances in general. So you've got a 60% increase in damage against Electric, Fairy, Flying, Grass, and Psychic. I do not have CPs here because right now, for what I know of, and obviously that will probably change, hopefully, is that Urshifu, we've only got 1 of right now, and if you paid for a second one, then you would be able to use both of the types. But in general, right now, that's the only way to get it. So I'm not going to put the CPs up there, even though we can really kind of figure out what it would be if we could actually fight them. But interesting, Rapid Strike has a lot of resistances, which actually makes it interesting for maybe tanking in general too, with Bug, Dark, Fire, Ice, Rock, Steel, and Water. Um, it has a really nice set. It's not as strong in Ice and Water as it is to Lapras, but it also has Rock, Bug, Dark, Steel, and Fire. Most units don't have fire and water, but still, fire, ice, rock, or dark, and or steel, you're going to be able to cover almost everything that they throw to. It's still not available yet, but I expect it to be available relatively soon, and I do mean relatively soon. Its stats, its attack is really high at 254. It is not the highest water type, though. Defense is 177, and the stamina is pretty good at 225 as well. So from a tanking standpoint, it's not as good as some of the others, but with all of its resistances, it's pretty solid. For the fast attacks, its weakness is it only has 1 second attacks instead of 0.5 second attacks. And obviously, if we're doing a water type, we're going to stick with Waterfall. If you are going to do a fighting type, for others, then you want to switch to counter. Overall, it is strong in both, so you can use it for both. I have a yellow check mark here because we don't have a 0.5 second attack, which is a negative to rapid. Urshifu, you really don't want to be having all 4 units being rapid during the non-transform phase, but it is still a useful tank in that regards in general. Um, for the charged moves, all in all, they're not really all that great in the water type. And once again, you only care about that in the normal form. And you have those charged moves that you can see right there. So from an attacker and a tank, I have them rated very high. Um, the attacker would have been up 1 more point if it did have a 0.5 second attack. I was tempted to take it down 1 more point, but overall, I think it's still a very solid attacker, especially with its ability to tank and even be able to heal fairly well in the water as well with the amount of HP it has. It still trails Lapras as a healer, but Rapid can do all 3 fairly well. It's a jack of all trades. It doesn't master any of it in water, but the good news is it still does a fairly good job in all 3. And honestly, that is a really useful unit. And unfortunately, we still can't upgrade it to the Rapid right now. But when we do, it will be very useful. Overall, from an attacker standpoint, it's still very solid at 7.5 or so out of 11. Tank is a little less, but I might have that ranked a little lower. I think I should increase it by 1. And the healer is slightly better than its tankiness, but still, it's got really good capabilities overall. And for that, I think this is a incredibly solid unit in general. Next is Krabby. So for Dynamax, you're going to fight Krabby. For Gmax, you're going to fight Kingler. In general, Krabby takes increased damage from electric and grass and takes reduced damage from fire, ice, steel, and water. Nothing different here. Krabby's IV is 835 to a hundo at 892. In general, we're going to be fighting mostly Krabbies, so we'll just go with the CPs here. The Kingler evolution is pretty simple. You go from Krabby to Kingler for 50 candy. And also, we've already fought Gmax Kingler before as well, so we have the Gmax available. It has the same weakness as Strikes. Its stats, 240 attack, 181 defense, which is actually a pretty good attack and defense combination. Its main weakness is it's got low HP, so you really don't want to be using this as a tank on the before the first transformation. You need to use its shields in order to tank very well because it is squishy. For its fast attacks, if you are using a Gmax Kingler, unless it is strong against Metal Claw, you're going to want to use Metal Claw overall. Mudshot is also useful as a ground type. The only problem is it requires a fast TM. Once again, only use it if for Gmax. If you're using a D-Max, you've got to be careful of which element overall. But for a G-Max, you could use theoretically all three, but I prefer as a G-Max to use the 0.5 seconds as much as possible. And for Bubble, you do have the 1 second overall. Obviously, for D-Max, you're going to be using that in general. It's only water strength, so from a fast attack point, you will be attacking with a little bit less attack overall, but almost all of your damage, you're talking about 92% or 95% of your damage, depending on it's sometimes a little less depending on if you're soloing versus a group of 4, but overall, you're going to not worry too much about your fast attacks, and speed is king usually overall. But once again, Dynamax, you're stuck with Bubble because you're definitely going to want to be attacking using Kingler. And Bubble is a very, still very good attack. It's just 1 second over 0.5. From an attacker standpoint, it is a very good D-Max, not the strongest D-Max. There's still one more that's stronger, but it is, in the G-Max form, it is the best water attacker, period. So you're going to want to use G-Max Kingler if you have one for an attack. For a tank, it is actually really, really good. It's slightly better than Urshifu Rapid, slightly better, especially because you do have the 0.5 seconds if you're using your G-Maxes. But as a healer, it is by far the worst. Do not put any of your candies into Max Spirit, as it just won't heal worth a dang. Honestly, you're looking at like 10 HP max, and that's if you're at level 50. I haven't done the calculations, but I think it's right around there. It's that poor. So just don't do it. I don't really have much more to say. But overall, it is a great attacker and tank, and for that, it does have a lot of uses. And I generally use, and I kind of cheated here for the next one. I use Kingler for as my main tank after the first transformation. Finally, we have Dynamax Sobble. Sobble here, you're going to be, this is the only fight right now. It does have a Gigantamax form. I just don't know when we're going to see it. I don't expect to see it within at least a year. IVs 579 for a floor to 627 for a hundo. Has the same weaknesses and strengths as all. It's weak to electric and grass, strong to fire, ice, steel, water for damage. Generally, its stats are pretty interesting, but let's go to Inteleon. It does take 125 candy to upgrade. Its attack is higher than Kingler's, but its defense is pretty low, and its HP is higher. But if you really look at the stats, Kingler's just got a little bit better mix, at least in my opinion. For its fast moves, you're going to want to use Water Gun. It is water type only and a Dynamax, so it's really dependent on its element. But frankly, you're not going to be using this during the non-transformation phase unless if you feel very confident by your tank being able to take all the tankiness, or you're very fast at switching. When you know it's about to attack, you're going to switch to another unit. And with that, let's go. From an attacker standpoint, it's really, really good, but it's not the best. Kingler is the best. For Dynamax, though, it is the highest. And in general, it is also one of the highest Dynamax just in general as well. From its tank standpoint, it's the worst in water, but it's still pretty solid in general. And from a healer, it's just not worth it at all. So we're going to look at the damage capability in the water standpoint. Basically, this is where I get all of the results in general. For the defense, I do something similar, but it's just a little too hard to show you all of the units at once. And from a healer, it's just a simple HP calculation, which you can see on the game itself, so I won't show you. But from a damage capability in water, you can see Lapras is the lowest, barely followed by Blastoise. And even Gmax Blastoise doesn't get into the realm of Kingler, Urshifu Rapid, and Inteleon. Gmax Kingler, though, is pretty much outlapping everyone, even Inteleon. But I didn't want to send Inteleon too much down, as Gmax Kingler is just one of the best attackers, period. But all in all, you can see that Gmax Kingler is about 80% higher than Lapras at level 20, and it gets even a little higher as you level up. Inteleon and Urshifu Rapid are roughly the same. Inteleon does have a 0.5-second move, but you're not really going to be using it at as an attacking type during a transformation phase. Once again, unless if you feel ultra confident yourself, I'd rather have people take the Urshifu Rapid instead, or frankly Kingler, just because it just has that much better defense in general. So on these, I'm going to also have the overall top 2 water units for each role. Each of these is going to be, I'm going to do this for all of the elements. So for attacker, we have Gmax Kingler, followed by Dmax Inteleon. This is one of the few elements where a Dmax will actually outperform a Gmax in attack in general. Not all Gmaxes in this game are great for attack. And so if there's anything that I can teach you on this channel, is that yes, Gmax has the highest overall attack score. It does not mean that it will always have the highest overall attack. The Gmax, I should have put Gmax Kingler here instead of regular Kingler, but Gmax Kingler has the highest attack in general, and it is very useful. Inteleon is number 2. Our best tank right now is Blastoise. But in general, I do not suggest Blastoise as much as I do Kingler, because Kingler just has a better overall tank and attacking in general. But for pure tank, Blastoise is the top bit. It does have more HP, so it can take. Generally, if I'm bringing something that is that both Kingler and Blastoise are strong, I will bring both. Generally, I will bring Blastoise in for the first round, then I will bring in Kingler afterwards. Generally, because Kingler can just do more damage overall, and with the shields, you can give it enough extra HP for it to be able to absorb and be fine. Finally, our best healers, we have Lapras, who is still one of the best healers in the game. It is now being outshone, obviously, by the normal characters, Chansey and Blissey and Gmax Snorlax. But Lapras still is a wonderful healer because it does have some pretty decent tanking capabilities as well. And finally, our second best healer is Urshifu Rapid Strike. So here is the top units for each role for water. I can't promise exactly how quickly I will be able to get through all of these, as these do take some time to create. I will be working on as many elements as I can, trying to put these together, and I will also update them at a relatively regular cadence. I'm hoping every 3 to 4 months. Some elements may not get updated just because we won't be seeing any updates at that time. But if you are interested, you can also look back to see how each will grow as well, as that's kind of my plan for the channel in general. I'm not doing an overall tier list anymore. We're just getting too many units and it's going to get too convoluted. So I'm going to start focusing on elements. I think that's the better way. If you have any ways that you would like me to see, let me know. I will probably also just do like overall attacker, defender, and healer, like maybe a top 10 lists and so forth. There's a lot of ways to do this, But, obviously you could comment down below to see how that is and might change up on how I go through everything as well. Also, if you haven't liked and subscribed, that really helps the channel, and I would be immensely grateful if you do. You could also catch me live on twitch.tv/mattguru. Ask me any questions